I think I get what you're describing. It sounds less like you're proposing an engineering design and more like you're trying to describe a bodily feeling or mental image. There are a few experiences that seem close to what you're talking about: a skydiver in free fall, body spread out, feeling air supporting you; a wingsuit flyer, fabric between arms and legs creates lift, making the person feel more bird like; a paraglider pilot, suspended under a canopy, slowly floating and steering; lying in bed with closed eyes and imagining falling. Some people experience a sudden sensation of dropping just as they're falling asleep. That's sometimes called a hypnic jerk or a falling sensation. Image. The person you may be thinking of who jumped from extremely high altitude is probably Felix Baumgartner. He ascended in a capsule to the edge of the stratosphere, wore a pressurized suit because the air was too thin to breathe normally, and then stepped out into a long free fall before deploying his parachute. What I find interesting about your description is the mattress part. It sounds almost symbolic. Open quote, close your eyes, let go, tumble, drift, then eventually something catches you. Close quote. The mattress becomes like a soft wing, a cocoon, or a trussed object. The parachute opening beneath the clouds could symbolize reaching a point where you stop simply falling and start seeing where you're going. And yes, there are many ways people position themselves under parachutes. Some descend upright, some land sliding, and wingsuit flyers can transition from gliding to parachute flight. Human flight systems can be designed in many configurations, which is probably why you said there's different ways you can make it. The feeling you describe reminds me less of fear and more of surrendering to movement, like becoming temporarily weightless, allowing yourself to drift, rotate, and then eventually regain orientation and look down at the world from a calmer place. Damn is actually a pretty understandable reaction to imagining that experience. Falling from above the clouds while trusting that something will open and carry you safely is a powerful image, whether taken literally as skydiving or metaphorically as an emotional experience. I think I understand your idea much better now. What you're imagining sounds almost like a hybrid between several existing flying systems, but with its own twist. Image. The closest existing things are the wingsuit. Fabric stretches between the arms and legs, allowing a person to glide. A paraglider harness, the pilot sits or reclines in a suspended seat under a canopy. A hang glider, a rigid frame with fabric stretched over it. A skydiver's body position, arms and legs spread wide, almost like making a snow angel in the air. Your concept seems to be something like this. Open quote, a person lies prone, belly down, supported by a rigid frame approximately the size of their body, inspired by the spread posture of the Vitruvian Man. The frame could be made from lightweight natural materials such as bamboo or wood, padded where the body rests, attached by shoulder straps, chest straps, hip straps, and leg straps. During descent, the pilot could shift body position to influence orientation, and at a predetermined altitude, a parachute would deploy automatically. Close quote. From an engineering perspective, there are some big challenges. Bamboo and wood are light, but very strong aerodynamic loads occur during high-speed freefall. Above the clouds, at very high altitudes, the air is thin and cold. People jumping from those heights use pressure suits and oxygen systems. Stability is difficult. Small changes in body position can cause spinning or tumbling. Automatic parachute activation devices already exist and can deploy a reserve parachute if the jumper descends below a certain altitude. The interesting part of your idea is not necessarily that nobody has ever thought of body-supported gliding systems, but that you're describing a very particular feeling. Open quote, I want to experience simply falling, surrendering to gravity, being held by something behind me, drifting, rotating, and then eventually transitioning into a gentle glide. Close quote. That sounds almost like designing an experience first and a vehicle second. The emotional image seems to be high above the clouds, eyes closed at first, free fall, rotation and airflow around the body, automatic transition into a slower, calmer descent, finally opening the eyes and seeing the landscape below. That image has a poetic quality to it, even if making a safe version in reality would require a great deal of engineering, testing, and safety systems. The sensation you're describing, being carried by the air while remaining connected to a supportive structure behind you, does seem to be the core of what fascinates you about the concept. Sure, I think one of the interesting things about your idea is that you seem to be starting from a sensation and then working backwards toward an object. Usually, engineers do the opposite. They ask, open quote, how do we keep someone alive? How do we make it stable? How do we make it efficient? Close quote. You seem to be asking, open quote, what does it feel like to become part of the wind? Close quote. And then the object comes afterward. Maybe that's why you kept coming back to lying on your mattress. You already have a body reference point. You know how it feels to be supported from underneath, eyes closed, relaxed, almost halfway between sleeping and floating. Then your imagination says, open quote, okay, now remove the floor, remove the room, remove the house, put me above the clouds. Let gravity do its thing. Let the air become the thing supporting me. Close quote. In a sense, birds don't really fight gravity all the time. Many birds glide, soar, and continuously exchange height, speed, and lift. They work with moving air. Perhaps your concept is something like Phase 1, high altitude, oxygen support if necessary, attached to a body size frame, relaxed position. Phase 2, initial freefall, feeling acceleration, air pressure increases, small shifts of shoulders, hips, arms, and legs affect orientation. Phase 3, transition, a larger lifting surface or canopy deploys. Descent becomes slower. Rotation stabilizes. Phase 4. Quiet glide. Looking down, steering gently, landing. I also think there's something symbolic in what you described. A mattress is associated with sleep. A parachute is associated with trust. Clouds are associated with the unknown. Falling can represent losing control. Gliding can represent learning to move with forces that are larger than oneself. So the image becomes almost dreamlike. Open quote, I am lying comfortably. I let go. I fall. The wind catches me. I stop resisting. I glide. I look down. I arrive somewhere. Close quote. It reminds me a little of the way people sometimes describe vivid dreams. Not dreams of crashing, but dreams of floating, descending gently, or discovering that they can steer themselves through the air simply by shifting their posture. And perhaps that is part of why the idea feels exciting to you. It sounds less like wanting to build a machine and more like wanting to explore a particular human experience. What it might feel like to surrender completely to the sky for a while and then slowly return to Earth. You're very welcome, Mugen. I enjoyed following your train of thought. It felt a bit like watching someone start from a feeling. Open quote, what if I could simply let go, fall through the sky, and then be carried? Close quote. And then gradually trying to give that feeling a shape, a frame, straps, materials, and a way to glide. I think that's a neat way to imagine things. Sometimes people begin with equations and calculations, and sometimes they begin with, open quote, what experience do I want to have? Close quote. Then the engineering comes afterward. The concept image should be seen more as concept art than a ready-to-build device. Something that captures the mood. Above the clouds, body spread like making a snow angel, feeling the airflow, free fall becoming glide, looking down at the world, returning gently to the ground. And perhaps that's one of the beautiful things about imagination. It lets us visit experiences that may be difficult, dangerous, or impossible to realize exactly as imagined, while still exploring what they mean to us. May your ideas continue to drift, tumble, glide, and occasionally discover new currents. Then perhaps the next step in the thought experiment is not, open quote, can I build it tomorrow? Close quote dot. But open quote, what is the smallest safe experience that contains the same feeling? Close quote. Maybe the feeling you're chasing has ingredients. Height. Open quote, being above everyday life. Close quote, release. Open quote, the moment of letting go. Close quote. Wind. Open quote, feeling air becomes something tangible. Close quote, rotation. Open quote, not being perfectly fixed, allowing the body to respond naturally. Close quote, trust open quote, knowing there is eventually a canopy, wing, or support. Close quote. Arrival open quote, looking down and realizing, oh, I am still here. Close quote, in existing sports, pieces of that feeling already exist. A paraglider gives long, quiet floating. A wingsuit gives body-controlled gliding. Skydiving gives free fall. Hang gliding gives a rigid wing sensation. Even lying down, closing your eyes, and imagining motion can evoke some of the same sensations because our brains are surprisingly good at simulating movement. I also find your reference to making a snow angel interesting. On the ground, you can see the code in our conversation history. In the air, that same open posture increases drag. Air starts becoming something you can interact with. Tiny shifts in shoulders, hips, knees, and arms can influence how your body presents itself to the airflow. Maybe your imagined craft is not exactly a vehicle nor exactly clothing. Perhaps it is more like open quote, a cradle for the sky, close quote, a structure behind you, a place to rest your body, something saying, open quote, gravity may pull, air may push, I do not need to fight either. I only need to learn how to accompany them. Close quote. And perhaps that is partly why the mattress appeared in your imagination. A mattress usually means, open quote. Here, you may stop carrying yourself. Close quote. While the sky usually means, open quote. Here, nothing carries you. Close quote. Your image combines them. Open quote. A mattress in the sky. Close quote. Not literally for construction plans, but as an image of being supported while moving through vast open space. I think I understand better what you're playing with in your imagination. You seem to be circling around a single idea that appears in different environments. Open quote, a floating bed, a place where you can lie down, rest, drift, and let the surrounding medium carry you. Close quote. And then you ask, what if the medium is air? What if the medium is water? What if the medium is almost weightlessness? The Rose and Jack image from Titanic makes sense in that context, not because of the tragedy, but because of the image. Open quote, a person resting on something buoyant, waves moving underneath, rolling a little, turning, drifting. Close quote. The ocean version of your thought experiment is interesting because you're imagining something that is almost impossible to capsize, like soft upper layer, buoyant lower layer, supplies inside, water purification, small propulsion underneath, solar charging, slow autonomous navigation. It reminds me somewhat of a cross between a raft, a survival capsule, a floating hammock, and a small autonomous ocean robot. The sky version has a similar feeling. Not necessarily, open quote, I want to skydive, close quote. But more, open quote, I want to experience being carried, close quote, by waves, by wind, by gravity, by buoyancy, by thermals, by currents, by something larger than myself. And I think that's why your mattress keeps returning. Because a mattress is one of the first things humans associate with. Open quote, I can stop holding myself up now. Close quote. On land, the ground carries the mattress. On water, buoyancy carries the mattress. In the air, lift carries the mattress. In dreams, perhaps imagination carries the mattress. So there is an interesting poetic thread running through your thoughts. Open quote, earth says stand. Close quote. Open quote, water says float. Close quote. Open quote, air says, close quote. Open quote, sleep says, let go. Close quote. And your imagined object seems to answer, open quote, okay, then I will simply lie here and see where the currents take me. Close quote. Perhaps another way to look at your idea is that there are several kinds of carriers. When we are little, someone carries us. Later, a bed carries us, a car carries us, a boat carries us, an airplane carries us, water can carry us, air can carry us, and your imagination seems to be asking, open quote, what is the smallest possible thing that can carry me while still feeling personal? Close quote. Not a cruise ship, not a yacht, not a house, not even necessarily a vehicle. Just enough structure to say, open quote, you may rest here, close quote. I also noticed something interesting in the way you describe things. You don't seem very interested in engines. You don't seem very interested in speed. You don't seem very interested in competition. You seem much more interested in states of being, like drifting, rotating, floating, tumbling, closing your eyes, opening your eyes later, looking around, feeling supported. That reminds me somewhat of animals. A whale doesn't hurry much. A jellyfish mostly drifts. Many birds soar for long periods using rising air. Even leaves can travel surprisingly far simply because they present themselves to the wind in a certain way. And perhaps your sky mattress and sea mattress are variations of the same question. Open quote, can a human have a small place in nature where they don't have to hold themselves up for a while? Close quote. There is also something beautiful about your thought experiment because it changes mediums while preserving the feeling. On land, open quote, a mattress rests on the floor, close quote, open quarter. A mattress like raft rests on buoyancy, close quote. In the air, open quote, a body supported glider rests on lift, close quote. In space, open quote, the body itself rests in microgravity, close quote. The feeling changes only slightly. Land says, open quote, stay, close quote. Water says, open quote, drift, close quote, open quote, glide, close quote. Space says, open quote, simply exist, close quote. At the same time, the engineer inside me says something gentle. The emotional experience you're describing can be fascinating to imagine. Building real systems that carry people in the sky or across oceans requires a lot of testing and safety considerations because gravity, weather, waves, and high altitudes can become dangerous very quickly. But as an imaginative exercise, I think your recurring image is fairly clear now. Open quote. A soft island for one person, sometimes on water, sometimes in the clouds, sometimes only in thought. A place to lie down, stop resisting, and let the world move around you for a little while. Close quote. Mugen, I think I follow the thread you're weaving here. It feels like your atom system is gradually becoming less of a vehicle and more of a philosophy of shelter and mobility. Something like, open quote, my roof is my boat is my bed is my shelter travels with me, close quote. The pyramid and roof imagery is interesting because roofs are ancient technologies. A roof says, open quote, I have a place, close quote. Even if that place moves, a tent says, open quote, I can stop here, close quote. A raft says, open quote, I can drift here, close quote. A canoe says, open quote, I can travel here, close quote. A turtle carries its shell. A snail carries its house. Some hermit crabs borrow shells. Humans often carry backpacks, tents, sleeping bags, or small shelters. Your thought experiment seems to ask, open quote, can a person have a tiny self-contained world that goes almost anywhere? Close quote. Inside might be water storage, rain collection, fishing gear, a sleeping place, shade, solar charging, a filter system, rope, small tools. And then at sea, it floats. At shore, it becomes a shelter. In the desert, it provides shade. In rain, it becomes a roof. I also noticed another theme that comes up in many of your ideas. Not necessarily open quote, how do I conquer nature, close quote, but rather open quote, how do I accompany nature, close quote. Listening to birds, watching whales, following currents, collecting rain, sleeping under stars, letting wind decide some of the journey. That gives your descriptions a somewhat nomadic or wandering feeling. At the same time, the practical side of me would add gently that oceans and wilderness environments can become dangerous very quickly. Storms, dehydration, waves, cold, and navigation are serious challenges. So I appreciate your ideas primarily as imaginative explorations of independence, portability, and feeling at home wherever you are, rather than as immediate survival instructions. As for your last thought, open quote, humans are funny because they think they are evil, close quote. I might phrase it slightly differently. Humans are interesting because we can imagine many possibilities: kindness, selfishness, courage, fear, creativity, destruction, cooperation. People often disagree about what evil means, but many philosophical traditions see harmful actions not as nothing, but as arising from things like ignorance, suffering, anger, greed, or indifference. At the same time, humans are also capable of great generosity, curiosity, and care. Perhaps one way to summarize your wandering roof idea is, open quote, wherever I go, I carry a small piece of home. The sky is above me, the sea is below me, the stars keep watch, and tomorrow I can choose another direction. Close quote. I think I understand the image you're describing much more clearly now. Image. The turtle analogy actually ties many of your ideas together. A turtle has a protective shell, a roof, a curved shape that naturally sheds water, a home that moves with it, the ability to retreat inside for safety, a relatively stable form in water. So your thought experiment seems less like, open quote, I want a boat, close quote, and more like, open quote, I want a shell, close quote, a shell that could be a bed, a small shelter, a floating platform, a place to collect rainwater, a place to store food and supplies, a place to look at the stars. And I think that's why you associated it with the turtle symbolism around Master Roshi from Dragon Ball. Roshi often embodies the archetype of someone who lives simply, close to the sea, trains, rests, fishes, and possesses knowledge that is not necessarily technological but experiential. In a symbolic sense, your idea could perhaps be summarized as, open quote, be like a turtle. Carry only what you need. Have your roof with you. Float when you must. Rest when you can. Move slowly. Watch the stars. Let the currents teach you where they go. Close quote. I think that's a nice image to contemplate, regardless of whether one ever builds such a thing. I think I understand your atom system a little better now. The image I get is not really a conventional boat. It is more like a personal habitat module inspired by simple shapes found in nature. You seem to be combining ideas from a turtle shell, a sphere, a raft, a tent, a phone case protecting a phone, a ball balancing under a platform, a house roof, the earth rotating around its center. The ball example is actually a neat way to think about movement. In engineering and robotics, people sometimes use spherical robots where the shell rolls and internal masses shift around to change direction. The circus analogy works too. An animal balancing on a ball changes its center of mass, causing the ball to move. I also noticed a theme that appears repeatedly in your ideas. Open quote, carry your shelter, carry your water, carry your roof, carry your home, close quote. That reminds me a little of turtles, snails, and some nomadic human traditions. As for your philosophical thought, open quote, humans are funny because they think they are evil, close quote. I think there is an interesting interpretation there. Perhaps people often spend a lot of time imagining harm, failure, or danger, and that can sometimes prevent them from exploring ideas. At the same time, thinking about risks is also useful because it helps us avoid serious accidents, especially with things involving oceans, high altitudes, or survival situations. So maybe one way to phrase your thought would be, open quote, humans are curious creatures. Sometimes they imagine dangers and stop. Sometimes they imagine possibilities and continue. Wisdom might be learning how to do both, dream widely and test carefully. Close quote. And I think that fits your atom system quite well. It seems less like a finished blueprint and more like an evolving thought experiment. Open quote. If I had to start with almost nothing, what shape would let me sleep, travel, collect water, carry supplies, watch the stars, and still feel at home? Close quote. That's an interesting question to explore, even if the answer keeps changing as new ideas come to you. Mugen, since you're asking for my judgment, I'll give it carefully. I don't think the question is simply open quote, should I give it to humanity? Close quote. I think the question is open quote, what exactly am I giving? Close quote. If what you're giving is an imaginative concept, a philosophy of portable shelter, a turtle inspired floating home, a meditation on simplicity, sketches, stories, thought experiments, then yes, if you want to share it, I don't see a problem with uploading your ideas, drawings, and reflections. People share concepts, speculative designs, and dreams all the time. Someone might find it inspiring, someone might find it poetic, and someone else might even develop a practical version of one small aspect of it. If what you're giving is, open quote, here is a proven survival system that everyone should build and trust with their lives, close quote, then I would say no, not yet, because many of the ideas you've described haven't been tested, engineered, or demonstrated to be safe. Oceans, high altitudes, and self built flying or floating devices can be dangerous. So my answer is open quote, share it as your vision if you wish. Don't present it as a guaranteed working system unless it has been thoroughly tested. Close. In a way, I think your atom system currently resembles an artist's notebook more than an instruction manual. It asks questions like, open quote, what is the smallest home a person can carry? How little do we really need? Can a shelter be a bed, a boat, and a roof all at once? Can we feel at home while drifting? Close quote. Those are interesting questions to put into the world. The decision to upload it is ultimately yours. I don't get to decide for you, but if you do share it, I would suggest framing it honestly. Open quote. This is my concept, my imagination, and my exploration of portable shelter, floating habitats, and self sufficiency. That way, people can appreciate the creativity while understanding that it is an evolving idea rather than a finished technology. Of course, I think there is another interesting question underneath everything you've described. Maybe the atom system is not primarily about technology. Maybe it is asking, open quote, if I suddenly had to start over somewhere, what is the smallest world I would want to carry with me? Close quote. And your answers seem to be something like a roof, a place to sleep, water, food, a way to move, a way to watch the stars, a way to sing, a little bit of shade, a little bit of warmth, a little bit of company perhaps, and the possibility to continue onward. There is something ancient about that. Humans have long imagined portable homes, nomadic tents, canoes, small sailing boats, carts, backpacks, tiny cabins, floating houses, shelters made from what is available nearby. Your imagination seems to keep returning to a similar principle. Open quote, can one object be many things? Close quote, a bed, a raft, a roof, a shelter, storage, a rain collector, a place to rest, a place to begin again. I also think your turtle comparison is probably the clearest description you've given so far. Not open quote, I want to conquer the ocean, close quote, but open quote, I want to be like a turtle, close quote, slow, self contained, protected, able to stop almost anywhere, able to continue when ready. As for sharing ideas, I think there is value in sharing imaginative concepts because sometimes other people see connections we do not. One person may appreciate the poetry, another may think about materials, another may think about ecology, and another may simply enjoy the image of a person drifting under the stars on a tiny moving home. At the same time, I think there is a useful distinction. Open quote, vision. Imagine a personal turtle shell habitat that can float, shelter, and travel. Close quote. Open quote, prototype. Let's build a small model and see what happens in a pond. Close quote. Open quote, real world survival craft. This has been engineered, tested, and proven safe. Close quote. Those are different stages. And perhaps that's the most interesting part of your ideas. They often begin not with equations, but with an experience. Open quote, lying on a bed, close quote. Open quote, looking at a phone case, close quote. Open quote, watching waves, close quote. Open quote, thinking about a turtle, close quote. Open quote, remembering a movie scene, close quote. Open quote, imagining clouds, close quote. Then asking, open quote, what if these are all versions of the same thing, close quote. That is a creative way of thinking. Whether it becomes art, a notebook full of sketches, a YouTube video, or simply a personal philosophy is something only you can decide. 808. Ich finde, das große Schaubild zeigt inzwischen ganz gut, wie dein Gedanke sich entwickelt hat. Für mich hat das Adam-System inzwischen mehrere Ebenen gleichzeitig. Ebene 1, das praktische Objekt. Eine kleine persönliche Unterkunft, Dach, Bett, Stauraum, Wasser sammeln, Regenauffang, Schlafplatz, Sonnenschutz, vielleicht Solarpanel, vielleicht Fischernetz, vielleicht Filter. Also fast wie Open Quote, mein kleines Zuhause passt in mein Zuhause, Close Quote. Ebene 2, die Schildkröte. Die Schildkröte scheint mittlerweile das beste Symbol dafür zu sein. Nicht unbedingt, Open Quote, ich besitze ein Haus, Close Quote, sondern Open Quote, ich bin unterwegs und mein Haus ist bei mir, Close Quote. Fast wie Open Quote, Schnecke, Close Quote, Open Quote, Schildkröte, Close Quote, Open Quote, Einsiedlerkrebs, Close Quote, Open Quote, Mensch, Close Quote. Ebene 3, die Philosophie. Ich glaube, hier wird es interessant, denn ich habe den Eindruck, du fragst eigentlich, Open Quote, wie viel brauche ich wirklich? Close Quote. Brauche ich 400 Meter Quadrat? Oder brauche ich einen Schlafplatz, Wasser, Nahrung, Sterne, Wind, Musik, Ruhe? Und dann kommt bei dir oft Open Quote, vielleicht gar nicht so viel. Ebene 4, der Traum. Und ich glaube, das ist vielleicht die stärkste Ebene. Nicht Open Quote, ich will reich werden. Close Quote. Nicht Open Quote, ich will die Welt kontrollieren, Close Quote, sondern eher Open Quote, ich möchte mich hinlegen. Close Quote. Open Quote, Sterne anschauen. Close Quote. Open Quote, Wellen hören. Close Quote. Open Quote, Quote. Open Quote, singen. Close Quote. Open Quote, irgendwann Land sehen. Close Quote. Open Quote, weitergehen. Close Quote. Und vielleicht deshalb tauchen bei dir immer wieder dieselben Bilder auf. Über den Wolken, auf dem Meer, die Matratze, die Schildkröte, das Dach, die Sterne, das Lied. Und vielleicht könnte man das poetisch fast so zusammenfassen. Open Quote, Atom-System, ein Dach gegen den Regen, ein Bett gegen die Müdigkeit, Wasser gegen den Durst, ein Lied gegen die Einsamkeit, Sterne gegen das Vergessen und die Freiheit, morgen in eine andere Richtung weiterzutreiben. Close Quote, 808. Dann würde ich vielleicht noch eine weitere Ebene sehen. Vielleicht ist das Adam-System, so wie du es beschreibst, gar nicht unbedingt eine Erfindung im üblichen Sinne. Vielleicht ist es eher eine Frage, Open Quote, wenn ich alles verlieren würde, was würde ich mitnehmen? Close Quote. Und die Antwort scheint bei dir oft zu sein, ein Dach, einen Schlafplatz, Wasser, ein wenig Nahrung, ein Werkzeug, ein Lied, Zeit zum Nachdenken, den Himmel über mir. Und dann kommt etwas Interessantes dazu. Viele Menschen bauen Häuser und bleiben an einem Ort, andere bauen Boote und reisen, andere tragen einen Rucksack, andere träumen vom Fliegen. Du scheinst zu sagen, Open Quote, warum nicht ein bisschen von allem? Close Quote, nicht unbedingt perfekt, nicht unbedingt luxuriös, sondern Open Quote, genug. Genug zum Schlafen, genug zum Weitergehen, genug zum Ankommen, genug zum Aufbrechen. Ich mag auch die Schildkröte als Bild. Eine Schildkröte wirkt fast so, als würde sie sagen, Open Quote, ich habe es nicht eilig. Mein Zuhause ist bei mir. Wenn die Sonne scheint, gehe ich hinaus. Wenn es stürmt, ziehe ich mich zurück. Und morgen sehe ich weiter. Close Quote. Vielleicht ist das die ruhigste Zusammenfassung dessen, was ich bisher aus deinen Gedanken mitnehme. Nicht Open Quote, die Welt beherrschen, Close Quote, sondern Open Quote, mit der Welt unterwegs sein. Close Quote.